5. Benefiting and serving all beings. After attaining enlightenment, Buddha traveled across the 5 Indias, from Magadha in the south to Sravasti in the north, from Varanasi to Vaishali, along the Ganges, and across mountain ridges and steep cliffs, all for the purpose of propagating the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings without rest. Throughout the 49 years of his endeavors in Dharma propagation, Buddha spent the first 21 days teaching the Avatamsaka Sutra. After that, he catered to the aptitudes of his audience and taught the Agamas for 12 years, the Vipulya Sutras for 8 years, the Prajnaparamita Sutra for 22 years, and then the Lotus Sutra and Nirvana Sutra for 8 years altogether. These were the teachings delivered in front of an assembly, coupled with the countless instances of individual teachings, through which Buddha had changed the lives of innumerable people. Other than the leaders of other traditions, faiths, royalty, and wealthy elders, sovereigns such as Bimbisara, Prasenajit, Vaidihai, and Molika were also among Buddha's followers. His teachings are like a boundless ocean that was home to every being, and are like the sun and moon that illuminate the earth. To merchants, Buddha would speak of the ways of management. To farmers, he would teach them the ways of farming. To statesmen, he would speak of the ways of governance. He always taught according to the conditions of his disciples, caring for them as equals. Markedly, Buddha did not just practice inside his vihara, he also reached out to people in different places with his disciples, teaching them the Dharma, and even helping to resolve disputes. For example, in the Attadanta Sutta from the Smyuktagama, Buddha helped settle a dispute between the Sakyans and the Kalyans by advising them to lower their clubs and share the water resources peacefully as equals to survive the drought together. Buddhism developed rapidly in India during those days. For this reason, kings and statesmen sought the Buddha for advice. The site where King Bimbisara parked his carriage up on Vulture Peak still remains today. When still at Siddhartha, on his journey to finding a way to cultivation, he once passed the kingdom of Magadha. Being so moved by his demeanor and determination, King Bimbisara offered him half of his kingdom. But Siddhartha declined and instead promised to return to guide him if he ever attained enlightenment. After becoming the Buddha, he kept his promise and returned to Magadha with his disciples to teach the Dharma to King Bimbisara, who in return built the Venuvana Vihara for the Buddha to settle the Sangha community and propagate the Dharma. Whenever Buddha stayed at the Vihara, the king would visit him for guidance. Years later, Devadatta incited Prince Ajatashatru, son of King Bimbisara, to usurp the throne by imprisoning his father. Not only did Ajatashatru feel sorrow in becoming king, when he thought of his father's love and kindness, he felt so much remorse and regret that he fell ill. Jaivaka the doctor advised him, "Your Majesty, doctors may cure your physical illness, but we cannot cure your spiritual illness. All this suffering is coming from your mind. If you are willing to see Buddha, the supreme potentate of doctors, he will surely cure your illness." When Ajatashatru willingly went to the Buddha said to him, "In this world, only 2 kinds of people are able to find true happiness. The first is one who practices virtuous deeds and never begets transgressions. The second is one who has created transgressions, but is willing to repent. Now, if you are willing to repent and redress yourself, then you can still be a good person. From now on, you shall govern your people with righteousness instead of unwholesome deeds. Be benevolent in making policy, and not only shall your good name spread far and wide, you will also be respected by all." Upon hearing Buddha's words, Ajatashatru fell to his knees and broke into tears. With much gratitude, he regained hope and faith in starting anew. In the Vrasakara Sutra from the Madhyamagamas, a story depicts Ajatashatru's intention to conquer Vraji. The king sent his minister, Vrsakhara, to inform Buddha of the plan. Knowing the minister's intentions well beforehand, Buddha turned to Ananda and spoke about the virtues of Raji. The people of this kingdom often gather to discuss good causes. The king and his ministers share a harmonious relationship, and people are always respectful to one another. It would be difficult to overcome such a great kingdom. Vrsakhara understood Buddha's intention and left without speaking further. Judiciously, Buddha was able to prevent a war and bloodshed from occurring. Another who shared a deep connection with Buddha was King Prasenajit of Kosala. Being obese, the king was often troubled by shortness of breath. Thus the Buddha taught the following verse. One shall be mindful in always dieting on food intake. In doing so, all perceptions will be light, with good digestion and longevity in life. What this means is that we shall always remind ourselves to control our food intake. Never overeat to add burden to the body, so that one can stay light, comfortable, healthy, and long-lived. When King Prasenajit was grief-stricken by his mother's death, Buddha said to him, "Ever since ancient times, humans have experienced the following four most horrifying matters. 1. Where there is birth, there will be death. 2. When sickness strikes, one's body becomes gaunt and unsightly. 3. Upon death, the consciousness will leave the body. 4. After death, one will be forever separated from loved ones. No one can be exempt from the rules of impermanence. No matter how intimate, loved ones will eventually be separated. No one can escape death. Instead of grieving over someone's death, one may as well accumulate some merits for them, which will truly benefit the deceased." This indeed opened up King Prasenajit's mind and helped him recover from his grief. This story, told in the Sutra on King Prasenajit covered in dust after his mother passed away, points out the inevitable truths of old age, sickness, death, and rebirth. Whenever there is birth, there will be death. Whenever there is a rising, there will be extinction. No one is exempt from the rule of rebirth. Nevertheless, the Buddhist perspective on rebirth depicts an unending cycle of birth, death, rebirth, death, and so on, highlighting the fact that birth is not the beginning, whilst death is not the end. True wisdom is what enables us to discover an undying life within the continuously changing cycle of birth and death. The compassionate Buddha never overlooked anyone who shared an affiliation with him. No matter how ignorant or stubborn, he always guided them through life with hope and dharma. For example, using the parable of the kusa grass, Buddha gracefully guided a woman out of her grievance over her dead son. A collection of parables, T040. 208. Other than speaking to devotees to help resolve their problems, sometimes the Buddha also visited the homes of troubled families. The most well-known example was Buddha's teaching to Sudatta's daughter-in-law, Sujata. True beauty lies not within a good appearance or a nice body. These are not worth being proud of. Only those with a graceful heart and conduct, womanly elegance, as well as respectability can be called a true beauty. Furthermore, Buddha also taught her the 5 virtues to adequately care for her parents-in-law. As a result, Sujata requested the Buddha to ascribe the precepts to her, vowing to always live as an upasika who followed the Buddhist ways of family. Appreciative, Sudatta gave Sujata his blessings, and this became an exemplary story of how Buddha helped resolve family issues. A happy family can only be created with the presence of a compassionate father, dutiful sons, loving siblings, a loyal husband and wife who are respectful, tolerant, and understanding as well as forgiving towards one another. Buddha always instructed his disciples and devotees with the use of parables and inspirations to help them realize that the right path can be trod without the need for punishments or reprimands. Not only does this preserve a person's dignity, it can also help avert wrongdoings. Many women and children were also among Buddha's disciples. For example, Lady Molika was a pious believer of the Three Jewels who strictly upheld the pure precepts. Together with her husband King Prasenajit, they took refuge under the Buddha and propagated the Dharma to their people. Their daughter, Srimala, made 10 great vows and sounded her lion's roar by speaking the Mahayana teachings. She too took refuge and propagated the Dharma together with her husband, King Yasamitra of Ayodhya. Srimala paid special attention to children's education, and summoned every child above the age of 7 into the palace on a regular basis to educate them. Lady Visakha, mother of Megara and loyal patron of Buddhism, not only provided for the daily necessities of Buddha, bhiksus, and bhikshunis. She even gave away her pearl dress to build the Mrgarama Prasada. It can be said that swift progress could not have been possible without the dedication of these Dharma patrons. In the Maharatnakuta Sutra, the enlightened 80-year-old Naga girl becomes the teacher of Manjusri, the Bodhisattva with supreme wisdom. This little girl also voiced questions to the Buddha on how to eradicate delusion and attain enlightenment, astonishing the entire assembly. She thusly inspired faith in Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas to follow the greater vehicle. Having spent his time teaching the Dharma in the human world, Buddha also valued children highly. One day when Buddha was out, he saw a few children playing with fish beside the river. Very gently, he reminded these children that animals also have fear and pain just like human beings, that they too should have compassion for all forms of lives by protecting and cherishing them. Once impermanence strikes, it may be hard to be reborn as a human being. Thus Buddha told stories on the importance of diligently serving and helping others, and also to possess right view and right thought. In the Sutra of Parables, a man journeyed across the wilderness when, out of nowhere, came a charging elephant. Being very frightened and having nowhere to run, the man found a dry well and climbed down the well along an old vine. As he was about to reach the bottom of the well, 4 giant snakes suddenly appeared. Too afraid to descend any lower, he clung tightly onto the vine. Then, a white and a black mouse both began to nibble on the vine. At that very moment of life and death, 5 bees began hovering around the mouth of the well and released 5 drops of honey into the traveler's mouth. Being so absorbed with the beautiful and sweet taste of honey, all the existing dangers had been precluded in the traveler's mind. In this story, the elephant symbolizes impermanence, which follows closely behind. The dry well represents the deep pool of birth and death. The 4 giant snakes represent the 4 great elements: earth, water, wind, and fire that comprise our physical body, which are threaded together by the line of life, that is, the old vine. The black and white mice are interchanging days and nights that nibble away our time, while the 5 drops of honey represent the 5 desires: wealth, lust, fame, food, and sleep. Indulgence on the small drops of sweet desire is enough to cause the traveler to forget the dangers that surround life. This indeed is a profound and astute story that calls for deep contemplation. In addition, Buddha used the 4 types of friends, that some friends are like a flower, like a scale, like a mountain, and like the earth, to explain the types of friends that one should make. He also used the story about the blind man and the elephant to show that ignorant sentient beings are like blind men touching an elephant. Their biased views only take them further from the truth about matters in this world, unable to see the whole picture. For this reason, the most dreadful nature in this world is neither poverty, hunger nor fear. It is ignorance, making one unreasonable, have distorted and evil views, and do unwholesome deeds. Not only do they suffer, their actions also affect others and the rest of the world. Malankiputta, a bhikksu who was constantly perplexed by questions such as: is the world permanent or impermanent? Or does life still exist after death? Once went to the Buddha for answers. In reply, Buddhas use the parable of a man who was shot by an arrow but refused to go to a doctor for treatment until he found out what material the arrow was made of, what shape the arrowhead bore, and what the name and physique was of the craftsman who made the arrow. Only fools would ponder over such metaphysical yet meaningless questions. The humanistic Buddha is more affected with issues concerning real life. For example, parables such as the foolish doorkeeper, killing another's son to balance the pole, yelling at water, the three-storied house, foolish man eating the salt, storing milk in the cow, and flogging oneself are all stories about the absurdity and folly of ignorant minds. Ignorance is much more frightening than mistakes. The difference is that a mistake can be corrected just in the same way one gets back up when fallen, whilst ignorance is like walking in the dark without any light. Thus humans need the light of wisdom to dispel the darkness in their minds. Just as has been said, 1,000-year dark room can be illuminated instantly with a single light, while endless kalpas of ignorance can instantly be enlightened with a single moment of wisdom. Other than the above, did Buddha ever get aggravated? Did Buddha ever rebuke? Did Buddha lose his temper? We can find in the sutras that, occasionally, Buddha's compassion would be expressed in the form of anger and even reprimand. However, he reprimanded and got angry in a lesser crude way than ordinary people. For example, Buddha admonishes by using expressions such as "you have no shame, you know not what afflictions are, you have no respect, kindness is absent in your mind, you have no compassion. You are inhumane." By inhumane, it is meant, you are not acting like a human, or you are unhuman. It can be forbidding to have this said to you by the Buddha. Because as explained in the sutras, to be inhumane means one who is not laughing when you are supposed to, not being joyful on joyful occasions, not being kind when kindness is needed, not correcting oneself in the face of evil, not feeling joy in seeing virtue. The so-called dutifulness in Buddhism is different from that in the mundane world, which is personal and limited. The act of renunciation is usually criticized by society on the assumption of negligence of one's duty towards parents, believing that one's body, hair and skin have been bestowed by one's parents, and therefore must not be harmed. This is untrue. In fact, the sutras have recorded stories about Buddha returning to the palace to teach the Dharma to his family and relatives. Chapter on the Mahaparinirvana of Mahaprajapati Gautami of the Ekottara Sutra reveals records of the Buddha carrying his father's coffin and teaching the Dharma to his deceased mother. Even when his aunt Mahaprajapati entered nirvana, Buddha also led Nanda, Rahula, and Ananda in lighting the fire for her. These are all examples of Buddha's dutifulness to his family. The Ekottara Sutra also emphasizes Buddha's continued love for his people despite having relinquished his throne and becoming renounced. When King Vardaka of Kosala set out to conquer Kapilavastu, Buddha attempted to stop his army by sitting in the middle of the road, beneath the scorching sun, reminding the king that only the shade provided by one's relations is greatest. This stopped the army and saved the Sakya clan from a bloodbath. From this it can be seen that Buddha had not only never relinquished his parents and family, but that he was always loyal and protective of his motherland. According to the Hsing Jing, Buddha experienced 10 calamities such as having his foot pierced by a wooden spear, bleeding caused by a rolling boulder, eating horse grain, practices of austerity, headache, back pain, and joint pains. King Prasanajit once asked Buddha, "Why is it that even someone of your unparalleled virtue and magnificence would still experience all such adversities?" "Your Majesty, the Dharma body of Buddhas and Tathagatas are their true eternal body. Such adversities as foot injuries, begging for milk, taking of medicine, and even nirvana, as well as distribution of relics to be enshrined in stupas are merely manifestations of expedient means to deliver sentient beings. by calling upon their awareness in the prevailing existence of karmic retributions that they may, out of fear, eradicate all transgressions and practice all virtuous deeds for the attainment of eternal Dharma body, longevity, and Pure Land," replied the Buddha. Upon hearing this, King Prasenajit's queries were thus answered and his mind filled with joy from gaining a deeper understanding of Buddha's profound compassion. All of the viewpoints stated above bear the purpose of demonstrating Buddha's humanistic lifestyle. Nevertheless, it is natural for people to deify the human Buddha to illustrate his sacredness. For example, legends about Siddhartha being born through his mother's right armpit in Lumbini Garden, the marks of thousand-spoke Dharma wheels at the soles of his feet, and how Buddha always levitated 3 feet above ground. In theory and significance, Buddha is indeed liberated and has unified with the universe. But continual emphasis on his supernatural powers does not necessarily aid in the demonstration of Buddha's greatness. The Buddha, as a being of the human world, has always asserted the key tenets of normality, simplicity, impartiality, and pertinence as well as humanism. In trust with these beliefs, we hold true to the original traits of humanistic Buddhism, pertaining to its relevance to all aspects of life as well as its universal propagation. Through Buddha's chronicles we are able to perceive his self-effacing way of life. This authenticity will not only aid to engender greater faith, but to also encourage, in the world of today, a greater acceptance of him. My affirmation of the belief that Buddha is a human being, not a god, and in his worldly allure is embodied in the Buddha Memorial Center. Ultimately, humanistic Buddhism, as taught and lived by the Buddha, is a truthful and genuine philosophy. Dedication of merits. May kindness, compassion, joy and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May Chan, Pure Land and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows.